Hello everyone, my name is Alvaro and I will be presenting our work in progress, a preliminary eye tracking and HMD orientation comparison to determine focus on a cardiac auscultation training environment. We thank the support of NSERC. So cardiac auscultation is a training cost-effective examination that has remained the same since its invention. However, there is a lot of concern regarding the loss of cardiac auscultation skills due to the lack of training and use of diagnostics equipment. To compensate this, several digital tools have been used to complement the traditional training, including mobile apps, websites, multimedia, and most recently, virtual reality. One of the interesting bits about virtual reality is not only the capability of exposing users to safe and scenarios based on real conditions, but it's also the capability of capturing metrics that can be used to understand how the trainees conduct their decision making. One of these metrics is eye tracking, and it's a tool highly used by industry to understand users' behaviors. However, eye tracking remains very exclusive to high-end VR headsets, and those employing consumer-level counterparts rely on hand tracking to achieve similar goals. So our goal here is to implement 3 different tagging systems to understand differences and how we could leverage what we learned from eye tracking and how we could transfer that into non-eye tracking devices. The 3 systems are comprised of an eye tracking system, a Countcast, and a Raycast. These last 2, they rely on the head tracking captured by the head-mounted display. We will be comparing how users spend their screen time during the cardiac auscultation examination, and we also want to compare if, for example, using the HTC Vive controller versus the index controller, which provides finger tracking, makes any difference in terms of the attention during the experience. Once we implemented these systems, we crafted the cardiac auscultation scene. The 3 systems were running simultaneously. We didn't provide any visual cues so that the users could focus only on the scene and avoid them being distracted by seeing the ray coming out of the eyes or the head-mounted display. In the scene, the user is required to grab the stethoscope, place it on the auscultation areas, and listen to the heart sounds. From our preliminary results, we collected data from 5 participants, and what we noticed once we group all the data is that they spent most of the time looking at objects that were not relevant to the examination. That is, they were looking at other things other than the patient, the stethoscope, and the auscultation areas. What's interesting about the data is that the Countcast method was the one that provided us with consistent objects that were within focus. We think that this is because objects within the cone were there for longer time in comparison to the Raycast, which is just a ray pointing at an object. So while moving the head just a little bit, the object could be out of tracking. And what we noticed with the eye tracking is that while users were listening to the sounds and performing the operation, they could be looking at different locations. This can be seen from figure 2, where you see the eye tracking bit, referred to as ray trace, had smaller chunks of attention on the objects. Countcast had the biggest one, and Raycast also has smaller ones. However, Raycast wasn't very accurate because where the headset was pointing at, that was not necessarily where the users were focusing with their eyes. So in this paper, we presented a comparison between HMD orientation and eye tracking to determine how participants focus on objects during a virtual cardiac auscultation. From our preliminary results, we can conclude that both Raycast and Countcast are not the best solution. However, which would recommend using Concast because it provides a better capture of what's in front of the headset. Since both controllers didn't make any difference, we didn't notice that users looking at their hands to figure out the controllers. I think that we're getting to a point where users are feeling more comfortable with these input devices, and because we were just pointing and selecting, it was a very easy to use interaction. So future work will focus on adding visual cues to further expand our understanding on improving HMD orientation based attention for consumer VR headsets. Basically, with what we have learned here, we're going to expand our study so we can understand how we can capture some of the interactions happening with eye tracking and how we can take those into non-eye tracking devices. Thank you.